Welcome to At the Table, a podcast by the Ohio Leadership Advisory Council. I'm your host, Dr. Elizabeth Lolli, co-director of OLAC. This is the space where Ohio education leaders come together to explore timely and relevant topics shaping leadership, learning, and school improvement across the state. Whether you're a superintendent, principal, coach, or classroom teacher, there's a seat for you here. Let's get started. Today, my guest is Dr. Joe Clark. And Joe is a recently retired superintendent, a longtime educator, 33 years in education as a teacher, principal, central office staff member, and also as a superintendent and a published author. So we'll talk a little bit about your book as we close today, Joe, because I want people to—
also.
Yeah, college professor.
A little bit of everything.
Forgot that one. I'd like to make sure that everyone knows about your book because it has some great insights in it. To start off with, we're going to talk some about leadership today. And you started off in education as a teacher. You've always been a scholar. I know you're a Mensa scholar from when you were younger. And I know that you've always been a very dedicated educator. Could you talk a little bit about your experience with teacher leadership, shared leadership when you were teaching, moving into that principalship area, and then moving up into the central office and then to the superintendency, and maybe some highlights and maybe some skills that you probably needed that are different at each one of those levels?
Sure. That's a wide-ranging question.
Yes.
I did 33 years. I just retired. And I started as a high school English teacher, and I did that for 6 years. And I think I could tell early on that I was going to continue moving forward. I like to say that I just get bored really easily, which is maybe true, but I also really appreciate the idea that the higher up you rise, the more opportunity you have to serve people. So when I was an English teacher, I was engaged. I was also working on my master's degree, so I was involved with whatever committee I could be. I was a union rep at our district, Akron Springfield. I know there's a lot of Springfields in Ohio. I was at Akron Springfield. Was a building rep for the union. I coached and advised everything, and really worked a lot to. We did a lot of studying back in the day and block scheduling, believe it or not, and so was instrumental in working towards that. Then I had just finished my master's degree, and a principal at Springfield said, "Hey, I heard there's a job in Barberton. You should apply for it." And I thought, I don't know that I'm ready to be an assistant principal yet. But she said, "Oh, it'll be good experience." So I applied, got the job. And from there, I was in Barberton for 9 years as a high school assistant principal, a middle school principal, and then assistant superintendent / personnel director under your leadership, which was just a great team that we had back in those days. And I was right. You know, the more you move up, the more opportunity you have to help other people. And I think leadership, as you move into like a teacher, it's all about doing what is best for the kids. So is a principal, but you do what's best for the kids by doing what's best for the staff in terms of evaluating them well, providing whatever kinds of supports you can provide. Moved into human resources, assistant superintendent, and there I think really the most important job there is you hire great people, and then you don't get out of the way. Great leaders hire great people and then coach them along. They help them get even better. So I think when you're in personnel, that's really what your focus is. And then I moved on to Kent City Schools for a couple of years in that role, and Nordonia for a couple of years. And I became a superintendent in Nordonia, was there for 14 years. And then finished up my career with a couple short stints in Westerville and Waterloo. And the superintendent, I absolutely love being a superintendent because of that whole idea of you're serving everybody now. It's not just teachers. It's classified staff, it's community, it's parents. It really is in districts that I've worked in, the kind of size that they are, the school really is the district, and everybody in the community looks to the school to be a really a big part of their life, and a big part of just a big part of community pride comes from the schools, and I really recognize that where I was.
In your experience, are there specific skills? Are they the same are they different whenever you're a teacher leader compared to when you're a central office staff member? Are the skills, the leadership skills that you have to have and have to use, are they same or different?
That's a great question. And there's an aircraft carrier in Charleston, South Carolina. And if you ever get a chance to go on that aircraft carrier and you make your way down to the galley, on the wall in the galley, they have a recipe for 10,000 chocolate chip cookies. And
right up my alley.
Yeah, amen. But you look at the recipe, and what is it? It's flour, it's sugar, it's eggs, it's butter. It's just like if you were making 2 batches of chocolate chip cookies. And I like to reference that because leadership is transferable. It knows no size, right? So whether you're a leader of teachers, whether you're a leader of principals, whether you're a leader in a district of 15,000 students or 3,000 students, so many of those skills are the same no matter what your role is. And that is communication, it's building trust, it's visibility, it's empathy, it's vulnerability, which I think is greatly important no matter what your role is. In other words, being a person who is able to say, hey, I messed that up. I apologize for that. And how can I do that better? I find that leaders that struggle the most are those that really can't laugh at themselves and can't, pick the speck out of their own eye, so to speak.
That's a really good point. I know that you worked as a building principal. I know that you had shared leadership in your building. Can you talk a little bit about how you built that particular culture in a building and what you did to make sure that everyone had a voice whenever they were part of your staff?
Yeah, I think that one of the most important things about being a leader of a building or a department or whatever is realizing that you don't have to do everything. Really, your job is to conduct the orchestra, not to play every instrument in the orchestra. And so if you have the ability, again, to be vulnerable, to give up some ownerships, to empower the professionals that are working with us, we have every place that I've been has had outstanding teachers, outstanding principals, outstanding counselors. Everybody has been great, and they're professional, and they're educated, and they've worked for a long time, and they're experienced. And when you allow those folks to use their professionalism and work together, and again, as the leader, my job is to give them resources and time. Those are the best things I can give them. And let them come up with some of the ideas. Now, another piece of vulnerability there is when you empower others, you have to be willing to accept whatever the decisions are, right? Otherwise, people won't trust you. And you have to build trust by allowing people to have some latitude and allowing them to make the same mistakes that you might make also.
That's a really good point. How do you transfer that building type of culture into a district level? Because as a superintendent, you have to be able to work with a variety of schools. You have to work with a variety of staff members, not just 40 staff members that you have in a middle school. You have to work with all the staff members. So you're talking about hundreds of people at times, depending on the size of your district. How do you transfer that culture into a whole district?
Yeah, so I'm a person who believes that a leader can't necessarily build culture. A leader can kill culture really easily. A leader can't build culture, but they can set the conditions to let culture thrive. And when I think about culture, I really think about visibility and empathy and vulnerability and gratitude, right? So when you are a leader in any organization, at any level of any organization, people want to see you, right? Because a teacher will feel very, very comfortable if you can go in their classroom and feel the heater not working or can hear the drips coming through. That builds a lot of credibility when you're visible throughout any organization. So for kids, it's going to their events and not just the stuff that people expect you to be at. As a superintendent, everybody expects me to be at the football game. Of course, I'm going to be at the football game, but it's all those fringe events that you need to go to, the Science Olympiad and the chess club and the bowling match, all those things where I go to a lot of those things and never see other superintendents there. Being visible is incredibly important. having empathy, understanding that everybody is going through situations that you know nothing about, and realizing that it's not enough just to be a good teacher or a good custodian or a good cafeteria worker. You need to be a good colleague. You need to be a good coworker. So having those, the empathy when somebody is going through a personal struggle. And I think as a leader, you've got to show that empathy, which sometimes means I've got to give a little more. I don't really have the authority to give raises or promotions. I can give time, and to give time or to give an ear or to give support in the way of like an EAP, an employee assistance plan or whatever. Gratitude, you just have to say thanks a whole lot. Thank you for everybody doing all the great work that they do. And again, vulnerability, admitting when you're wrong, apologizing when you're wrong, and making up for it. And then try not to make that mistake twice. I think if you do those things, that sets a culture where people really feel comfortable coming to work. They enjoy coming to work. They enjoy working with each other. And when that happens, culture blooms.
One of the things that you did as a superintendent in Ordonia was you read onto a video platform, and you read to an audience that was, of course, not there. Can you talk a little bit about how you used that to build that relationship with your community, with your students, parents?
Yeah, I loved doing that. I did it in Ordonia and in Westerville both. Goodnight in Ordonia and then Goodnight Westerville. And, part of my background, in addition to being an educator for 33 years, I was a mobile disc jockey for 24 years, and I was a camp director for 10 years. So, and I think those skills as a DJ and a camp director really helped me in my career. Because I think also being a leader is, you have to be able to laugh at yourself. You can't be too stuffy to not be able to be goofy. So every Thursday night, me and my puppet, Sir Reads a Lot, would go on Facebook Live, and I'd read with my puppet, and we'd read the book, and then I'd have guest readers come in. It was at some point, it was the mayor. I had Governor DeWine at one point was a guest reader, although he did it remotely because that was during COVID. But teachers and police officers come in and be my guest reader. We'd read a book, and all the families that were engaged could comment as I was doing this on Facebook Live. Then the next day, I would put all those people who commented in a hat. I'd pull a name, and that child would win the book. So I would go out with my puppet to the school. We had autographed the book. We'd get a picture and put it up on Facebook and on Twitter at that time. And it's just amazing how when you do things that aren't expected of you, when you're not afraid to just step out a little bit and maybe be a little silly, how much people appreciate that. They see you as a human being. They don't see you as a suit. They see you as a real person, which also goes to them being much more lenient when you do mess up, because you do so much good for them. When you have an error, they're like, oh. They start to judge you based on your intentions instead of your actions, which I think is really important.
Well, I really enjoyed those because I had notifications that came every time you posted one, even though we weren't in the same city or anything like that. I would watch those, and I enjoyed those. They were a great way to build a literacy culture.
Yeah.
And also a great way to just build those relationships.
Yeah, it was fun. And I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. I would end each year by having students write their own books. And any kid that wrote their book, I would read that on air. So I'd have parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles from all over the country watching as I would read the kids' books. It was a whole lot of fun.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
And I actually loved it. I thought that's really leadership. The superintendent's reading to students on a weekly basis and has a puppet there with him or her. And it was just a great idea.
Leadership's not telling people, hey, we need to take these chairs down. Leadership is going in and helping take the chairs down.
Yeah, I appreciate that thought too. You continue to build that culture with your community through that process, as well as showing up at places and being there for people to see you and to see that you cared about the students that you served by visiting teachers' classrooms, making sure that you were doing walkthroughs and that sort of thing. How do you build the culture, the relationship with a broader scope? For example, how did you build it with the city How did you, as a leader, reach out to other leaders that were in city positions or in places that you needed to connect to for your school district?
Yeah, I think I was most successful doing that as a superintendent. And each place that I was a superintendent, Nordonia, Westerville, and Waterloo, really taking an idea from schools can't do it alone. I can't remember the author's name right now, but he was at a OSBA conference at one point. Jamie Vollmer, right? I took his idea and massaged it a little bit. So each place that I became a superintendent, I sat with the administrative team, and we came up with every organization we could think of in the community. So it was obviously school things like PTA and booster clubs, but it was also elected officials, ministers, Rotary, Chamber of Commerce, the police, the fire, business groups, Chamber of Commerce, all of those things. And we'd come up with a list. And at Nordonia, it was, maybe 100. At Westerville, it was maybe 150. At Waterloo, it was a lot smaller, maybe 10. But then I would ask the leaders of those organizations to please invite me out to their group. And I'd ask 3 questions. What do you like about our schools? What can we do better? And what do you expect out of me as a superintendent? And that got a lot of great, first of all, trust building. People would say to me, we've never had a superintendent who came out and asked these kinds of questions. Thanks for listening. We know, and I'd always promise, I can't fix anything tonight. I just want to hear what the issues are. They're very grateful for that. And then that really gave them trust in me that I cared for the community. It gave them a face to a name. And I keep saying the word vulnerability. It showed a vulnerability that I'm not here just to talk about great things. I want to hear how we can improve. And so at Nordonia, I had maybe 75 individual meetings with groups. At Westerville, I met with more than 85 groups in 3 short months, asking them those questions and getting that feedback. And I did the same at Waterloo. I was much, much smaller. And I think that goes a long way in getting the community to see that you care about them. And then again, my time at Nordonia was much longer. So at Nordonia, then we would have frequent meetings with the elected officials. We would have 1 or 2 board meetings a year where it would be like a work session. We'd set it up. We'd have the elected officials come in and we'd just chat. These are the things that are going on. What are the things you're hearing? Just to keep that communication open.
Those are great ideas. That's a great way to make sure that you build that community and that culture of we're all engaged in this together. Yeah. That's a great opportunity for everybody. One of the toughest relationships to develop, depending on the school system, is with the unions, whether it's a classified union, whether it's a teachers union, whether it's just combinations of various unions. I know in one of the districts where I was a superintendent, there were 13 unions.
Wow.
And of the 13 unions, the majority of them I had a great relationship with. I was able to actually lead and work, and they helped me along the way. And then with a couple of them, it was just a constant struggle back and forth. And then in another district, the 2 unions I worked with were great. They didn't, we worked together and built a really great opportunity. We've all been involved as superintendents, even as principals. We've had issues or celebrations with our unions. Can you talk a little bit about, as a leader, what we can do to take care of those situations, whether it's a celebration and we work well together, or whether it tends to be a more adversarial, either because historical things in that community, that district, or because of something that's happening, like a changeover in the state or something like that causes some of those issues.
Sure. I've been very fortunate in my career that the unions that I've worked with have been incredibly professional, incredibly focused on kids, with maybe one exception. They were very, very caring about students and doing the right thing. And I think with unions, first of all, it comes down to relationships and honesty, and particularly with unions, nobody likes surprises. So I think that it's very, very important to keep unions apprised of things that are going on in the district, to let them know, and anything that you feel might cause any sort of pushback, just to get their feedback before you make decisions. That does not mean that they will always agree, but I think they appreciate knowing and feeling like they're in the loop when those kinds of decisions are made.
The idea of working very closely with all the partners in education it's really important as a leader. You've got to work with your stakeholders. You've got to work with everyone that's involved, because everyone owns the school.
Yeah,
everyone owns the school district. And I think that one of the things that leaders need to understand and be able to do are building those relationships. If you were to give advice to others that are aspiring to be leaders, whether it's principalship, whether it's a superintendency, whether it's central office, doesn't make any difference. What are some things that you would advise them to do in their leadership roles?
So, I come from a large family. I have 10 older brothers and sisters, and my 6 older brothers used to make me go to the backyard and climb this wild cherry tree, and then they'd throw baseballs at me. And I say there's nothing that's ever prepared me for the superintendency like that experience in my life. I'm only being a little facetious about that. But I think if you're becoming a leader, I think you really have to have the understanding that it is a mission and it is about service. If you're going into it for any other reason, if it's more money or a title or power, that is the absolute wrong reason. And so if you're a young person thinking about starting a leadership journey, you really need to think to yourself, do I want to be really a successful leader, or do I want to be a leader who really just hangs around for a while? Because it's really easy to hang around for a while and you're not going to do anything great for kids. Leaders, by their very nature, have to make decisions sometimes that are tough and that irritate people. You can't be a superintendent for 12 years in place without irritating some people, because you make a lot of decisions. And decisions are often two people in complete conflict who you've got to side with somebody. So you're going to make people mad. So I think if you're a young person, first of all, make sure you have the disposition to know that you are going to be serving others, that you're going to be probably upsetting some people, and know that that might be worth it. It might be worth it for you to have some stress sometimes, because you understand that you're really doing a lot of good for young folks. In addition to that, it's all those things we've talked about: visibility, empathy, vulnerability, gratitude. You have to be don't be the best principal, or don't be the best superintendent. Be the best person for that job, and interact with your colleagues well and show that you care. And when you do that, I think you'll be very successful, notwithstanding lots of challenges.
Lots and lots of challenges, for sure. As we start to wrap up the podcast, you wrote a book, and I know the title has to come from what you mentioned about being a DJ for the 24 years. If the dance floor is empty, change the song. I'd just like you to talk us through this book. First of all, the motivation to write it. Why would you write this book? And secondly, what are some real key principles for future leaders, for current leaders, to know from your experiences and the writing that you put in this book?
Yeah. So, the inspiration really for that book was I feel like in my life, I've had a lot of experiences that have taught me a lot of lessons that are applicable to education. As the youngest of 11 kids, and as a DJ, and as a camp director, a lot of things have happened that made me really have, I think, a different perspective on how we should be. So what I think the great thing about the book is there's no research. It's just Joe being Joe. So I'm telling a lot of stories that I think bring home the idea the whole idea of what we've been talking about for the last half hour, which is of being a good person, being kind, being vulnerable, being willing to do whatever you can to help people. So that's kind of what my motivation was. And when you go through the book, it takes you through leadership for teachers, leadership for principals, leadership for assistant or superintendents, but also then just like kind of life lessons, things that you should be aware of. And again, stories. So where the title comes, if the dance floor is empty, change the song, comes from when I first started DJing and I'd put a record on and nobody would dance. And I would sit there blaming the people for not dancing. And it was when I had this epiphany that maybe it's my fault that people aren't dancing. So maybe I should change the song, that the dance floor filled up. And so when you're an educator, if you're a teacher and kids aren't engaged in your lesson, we can blame the kids or we can change the lesson. If I'm a principal and teachers aren't paying attention at my faculty meeting, I could yell at the teachers or I can change my faculty meeting. We all have the ability to change what we're doing. I like to say that, if you're going to go into education, for me, it was 33 years. I want you to work 33 years, not 1 year, 33 times, right? You need to constantly grow. You need to constantly change. And so that's where a lot of the stories focus on those sorts of ideas.
Well, I want to thank you for being here. You've had an outstanding career. You're a great leader. I know that personally from experiences with you. And I know that each of the districts that you've been in, whether it was as a teacher, whether it was an assistant principal, in the central office as an assistant superintendent, or as a superintendent, they've been fortunate to have you. Your love for students, your love for people, and the work that you do and the leadership that you exhibit, it's just really made a difference in those places. So I want to thank you for being here with us today. And I wish you well in your retirement. I know you're not really retired.
I'm not really retired. No, I'm too young to really be retired. I am very grateful for STRS for making the changes. I took advantage of it, but I'm going to keep doing something, hopefully in the field of education where I'm going to be helping people. And I want to thank you for all of your leadership because you were just the best mentor I've ever had. And our years
thanks.
Together in Barberton and our friendship since then has just been invaluable to me. So thank you.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for joining us at the table. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Lolli, and it's been a pleasure to have you with us. If you found today's conversation valuable, be sure to subscribe and share with your colleagues. For more leadership tools and professional learning resources, visit ohioleadership.org. And until next time, keep leading with purpose.